I never thought I'd be sitting here, staring at a crumpled $9 gas station gift card while my father-in-law uncorked a $5,000 bottle of vintage wine. But here we are. Imagine standing in your own living room, watching your only son hand over a gift that costs more than your first car to a man who has done nothing but belittle you for 20 years, only to turn to you and hand you a piece of plastic that wouldn't even cover a gallon of premium fuel. The look of pure, unadulterated pride on my son's face as he toasted to his grandfather's health, while I stood there holding a literal insult, was the moment I realized my entire family dynamic was a lie. Was I wrong to lose my cool in front of everyone, or would you have walked out too? I need you to listen to how this started, because the betrayal didn't begin with the wine. It began years ago, and I was just too blind to see the seeds of resentment being sown in my own home. To understand how a father gets relegated to a $9 afterthought on Father's Day, you have to understand the man I married into and the shadow he cast over my son Leo. My father-in-law Arthur is the kind of man who measures a person's worth by the weight of their portfolio. He made his fortune in real estate, and he never let me forget that I was just a high school history teacher. To Arthur, I was the man who trapped his daughter in a life of mediocrity. Every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner was an exercise in passive-aggressive comments about my salary, my choice of car, and even the neighborhood we chose to raise Leo, Indiana. My wife, Sarah, always told me to just ignore him, saying that's just how he is, but she never truly stood up to him. She grew up in that environment of gold-plated expectations, and I think, deep down, she still craves his approval more than she values my dignity. Then there's Leo, my son. I thought we were close. I spent every weekend at his soccer games. I stayed up until 2 a.m. helping him with his history projects, and I took out a second mortgage just to make sure he could go to the private university he wanted without being buried in debt. I thought I was teaching him about sacrifice, love, and the value of a hard day's work. But Arthur was always there in the background, whispering about real success and taking Leo on lavish trips to Europe that I could never afford. He was buying my son's loyalty one luxury watch and one 5-star meal at a time. For this Father's Day, I didn't expect much. I never do, but I expected respect. We were all gathered at Arthur's estate for a joint celebration. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars, and the kind of tension that makes your skin crawl. Leo arrived late, looking sharp in a suit that I knew Arthur had bought for him. He was carrying 2 bags. One was a large, ornate wooden box, and the other was a tiny, flimsy paper envelope. My heart actually raced for a second, thinking maybe he'd finally seen through his grandfather's posturing and decided to do something meaningful for me. I watched as he approached Arthur first. He gave him a hug that looked more like a business deal and presented the wooden box. When Arthur opened it, the room went silent. It was a 1945 Chateau Mouton Rothschild. I'm not a wine expert, but I know enough to know that bottle is a legend. It's worth $5,000 easily. Arthur's eyes lit up with a triumph I'll never forget. He looked at me, then back at Leo, and said, "Finally, the boy has some taste." Leo beamed, his chest puffing out as he explained how he'd tracked it down through a private collector. Then it was my turn. The room stayed quiet as Leo handed me the small envelope. I opened it, expecting a heartfelt letter, or maybe a photo from our last camping trip. Instead, out fell a gas card for a local station with a handwritten note on the back that said, "For the commute. Love, Leo." I checked the balance on the sticker on the back. $9.82. It wasn't even a round number. It was likely the leftover balance from a card he had in his wallet. The contrast was so sharp it felt like a physical blow to the chest. My son, the person I had sacrificed my financial future for, had spent months of a salary I helped him secure on a gift for a millionaire, while giving his own father the equivalent of a ham sandwich. So, that is the situation I found myself in, standing in a room full of people who were laughing at a joke Arthur just made while I held the evidence of my own insignificance. I felt the heat rising in my neck, and the world narrowing down to that plastic card. Before I tell you what I did next and how I blew the lid off this entire family's secrets, I want you to pause. Look at that situation honestly. What would you have done? Would you have smiled and said thank you to keep the peace? Or would you have finally snapped? Let me know in the comments right now, because I really need to know if I'm the crazy one here. I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there, watching Leo pour a glass of that $5,000 wine for Arthur. Sarah came over and whispered in my ear to not make a scene, and that Leo is just young and doesn't understand the optics. That was the breaking point. The optics. My life wasn't a PR campaign. It was my life. I walked over to the table, picked up the bottle of wine, and looked Leo dead in the eye. I asked him, "Leo, do you remember who paid for your car insurance for the last 4 years? Do you remember who spent his entire savings so you didn't have to work 3 jobs while in college?" He looked confused, even a little annoyed. He told me it wasn't the time for this. I told him it was exactly the time. I looked at Arthur, who was smirking, and I realized they weren't just celebrating Father's Day. They were celebrating my replacement. I didn't scream. I just calmly set the gas card down in the middle of Arthur's expensive cheese platter, and told Leo that if he felt my contribution to his life was worth $9, then he was officially overpaid. I told Sarah she could stay and enjoy the vintage, but I was done playing the role of the humble servant in Arthur's kingdom. I walked out, drove home, and when they all showed up at the house later to talk, I had already packed Leo's remaining things and put them in the garage. I told him that since he was wealthy enough to buy $5,000 gifts, he was certainly wealthy enough to find his own place to live and pay for his own health insurance starting tonight. Sarah called me cruel. Leo called me jealous. But for the first time in 20 years, I felt like I could breathe. The aftermath has been a total mess. Arthur has offered to sue me for emotional distress, which is hilarious, and Leo is currently living in Arthur's guest house, realizing that living with Grandpa comes with a lot of strings he didn't have to deal with at my house. Sarah and I are in counseling, but I'm not sure there's a way back from seeing how little she valued my feelings in that moment. I realized that by trying to be the bigger person for 2 decades, I had just made myself a smaller target. This whole experience taught me that you can't buy respect, but you can certainly show someone exactly how much you don't respect them by the way you choose to honor them. I'm not saying it's all about the money, because it never was. It was about the thought, the effort, and the acknowledgement of sacrifice. If you think I was right to kick him out and stand my ground, hit that like button. It's been a rough few months, and I need to know I'm not alone in this. Make sure to subscribe for more stories because believe me, the drama with Arthur is far from over. Please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I overreact over a gift, or was the gift just the final straw in a long line of disrespect? I'll see you all in the next story.